All right. So we've all seen the recent chit chat, the news headlines, and all of the conversation around short-term rentals in BC. So what we've done is we've pulled together three amazing agents in three different areas of the province to discuss what we think these will have, what impact they may have in our areas of expertise. So we have Marika and we have Kate. Do you each want to do a quick little intro and then we can hop into the discussion?
Go
Sure.
ahead, Marie.
My name is Marika Soleil. I'm in Kelowna, and yeah, it's definitely going to affect us. So I'm interested in seeing how your markets are affected, and happy to discuss how Kelowna is going to be affected.
And I'm Kate. I am the team leader of the Kate MacPhail Group in Vancouver. And my market, interestingly enough, is not changed really by what has been proposed or, I guess, legislated. However, I think most people in my market don't know that this doesn't change anything. So it's going to be interesting as far as people actually grasping what Vancouver legislation in terms of Airbnb.
Oh my goodness, I am so curious about that because Vancouver is over 10,000 people. So why are they exempt?
Oh no, Vancouver's not exempt. It's just this is exactly what Vancouver has had in place. It doesn't change.
No changes.
But there are there's a very slim number of people in our marketplace who know that Airbnb is restricted to principal residences only in the city.
Oh my gosh, I'm very curious. I'd be very curious to see the stats on how many illegal short-term rentals there are then. And then if yeah, right. And then if this increase of policing or requiring licenses or whatever they choose to do, and how that will or will not have an impact.
That's where I think it will have an impact.
I wonder how much the cost is going to be, though, to now monitor all of these illegal or non-conforming short-term rental spots. That is very curious to me because I would have thought Vancouver would have been the reason for this change in the act.
Yeah, and Airbnb is actually hosting a public forum today on enforcement because they're going like, we can't enforce this? Like, there's nothing we can do about it. So I'm actually really curious to see how that goes.
Oh my God, me too. You'll have to keep us posted on what comes out of that, or if anything, or it's just stirring the hornet's nest even more.
Oh, you know it well.
Marika,
Yeah,
what about over in Kelowna?
So I'll just quickly share these quick stats with you guys. So as of September 2023, we've got 764 active short-term rental business licenses. So get this, 74 are principal residences and 690 are non-principal residences. I think that with Kelowna being the tourist attraction it is, a lot of people come here and stay in Airbnbs. It's huge. Our population triples in the summer. Everybody knows it. Everyone's coming here. And Kelowna does not have a lot of hotels. So a lot of people here look to Airbnbs to stay. And in terms of investments, people buy in Kelowna for short-term rentals. Right. So depending on, what happens, there's going to be a lot of people that purchased investments in the last few years, thinking that they're going to be running these Airbnb businesses, and they're going to be, SOL. The whole policing aspect is going to be just another way to control people. And the licensing itself, like I have a client currently that was looking into licensing her suite inside of her home. They're like so behind. It'll take at least 3 months for them to even get to her application. And this is after already dealing with them on different things. They're asking for a lot more, and it's becoming a little bit harder to even get the licensing. So it's just gonna, slow things down. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, how people are going to respond. Like, are people going to start selling off their units? Are they going to turn to long-term rentals?
Yeah, I agree.
And it ultimately comes back to ROI for investors, right? Like the reason they bought that is obviously they saw a greater return in investment than doing long-term rentals. And with the interest rates and the unpredictability there, and the fear around that, it's going to be super interesting to see what those investor type folks, Marika, that you just talked about, and what they'll do. Interesting enough, Kate, it's similar in the Kootenay area. Invermere is exempt. It's under 10,000 people. Also, there's the other exemptions with the mountain resorts, so Pano, Fairmont. So a lot of my area that I operate in is no changes. However, there's always a risk, right? The local municipalities can do something and they can opt in, which could be concerning, could be scary. And it's, I guess, something that I will be telling all of my clients is, yeah, it doesn't apply right now, but it doesn't mean that they won't do something on the local side going forward.
Yeah, I think it comes back to like, how highly do you want to be leveraged? And I've always said to clients, if you're looking at buying something, you want to invest, you want in an investment property. If you're working your numbers based on short-term rental return, it is so risky, because even though Vancouver does have these principal residence restrictions, lots of other municipalities in like Greater Vancouver don't. And we still tell people, hey, look, these numbers are going to be really great for you for the meantime, but please make sure this works for you based on long-term rental as well, because there's no guarantee. There's not even a guarantee within your strata, right? Like your strata could enforce no short-term rentals at any time. So it kind of goes back to when people were, purchasing things at 1% and 2% interest rates. Well, can you service that at 5%, 6%, 7%? And a lot of people who purchased like a 1-bedroom rental, say in Vancouver, in the last 5 years, they might have locked in at 2.5%. And their monthly cost, all in, including maintenance fee and property taxes, under $3,000. So in theory, you could rent that for $3,000 a month if you were then forced out of short-term into long-term rental. But if you were to refinance this year at 6.5%, now your cost is $4,000 a month. So what are you going to do? You can't rent it for $4,000 a month. So you got to release that back into resale if you don't want to eat that cost for however long. And that's where I think changes.
And the questions that we're going to be asking our clients now are going to change, because often with the low interest rates, people are excited to get into investments, the short-term rentals. It's awesome. This is easy cash flow. So I think the questions for our investor clients are going to change now. Like you just said, Kate, like, how can you handle this for long-term tenancy? Are you prepared for a hike in interest rates again? There's going to be different questions. And I think, especially in Kelowna, where we get so many investors looking at short-term rentals because it's such a popular thing, that's going to decrease. In terms of people coming here tourist-wise next summer, again, I'm a little bit worried, right? What if the hotels now they book up so fast, they're going to be able to increase their rates because there's a lack of places to stay. So I don't see it as being a great thing. Is it going to increase our housing supply? Because that's the main concern, right? The lack of housing in Kelowna. So, I mean, I don't know. These homes are going to go for sale. Prices are still relatively high. They're not coming down drastically. So again, it goes back to an affordability issue. Also, when you're purchasing into short-term rental buildings, you have to put, a higher percentage down. You can't just normally get it for 5%. So that's going to be conversations to be had with people's financiers as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, what do you think, Kate? Do you think, in your opinion, that these changes are going to help the underlying issue, which I believe the BC government is trying to solve for, affordability and accessibility to housing? Do you think in Vancouver that this is a step in the right direction?
No. I mean, I do think that the ability to, like, in theory, release 16,000 entire homes or whatever that number is out to long-term rental is a very, like, it is theoretically a very immediate solution, versus having to build 16,000 units or whatever the equivalent would be. That's if that happens. I mean, I think there's always going to be some difficulty with enforcement around that as well. But, it's like such a challenge because we're looking at a problem that's so incredibly big and so incredibly deep that where do you even like dig in to try and affect change? And this is a very this is a treat the symptom change, and that's not wrong. I mean, we need to treat the symptoms because there's people that just can't get housing. So I'm not in disagreement with that at all. But I do think that this all comes back to affordability, right? Because why are people doing short-term rentals? Well, because you can't really afford to service the debt of owning a $700,000 one bedroom, except for with a short-term rental, right? Because you can't rent a one bedroom for that much. So it comes back to affordability, and it comes back to inflation. What are we going to do about inflation? It's so expensive to live, right? And so you have a rental property, you used to rent it month to month, but it doesn't
Extra
cover
income.
anything, right? So now it's like, what am I going to do? Short-term rentals, like it all comes back to cost of living. And so releasing Airbnb into long-term rental, it doesn't do anything for cost of living, right? That's a deeper problem. So I'm a little bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. And just because we say that they cannot do short-term rentals, depending on how they choose to monitor and police that, that's one thing. But some people may just opt to sell. And the people that we're trying to solve for in terms of accessibility and affordability may or may not even be able to afford the market price at the time that these go on the market. So I don't know, it's like a bit of a chicken and an egg, in my opinion.
I also think people that invest in short-term rentals, they sometimes get in over their head, thinking it's going to be so lucrative and so much fun and easy. It's not easy. Like I know property managers that refuse to even do short-term rentals because there's so much turnaround and there's so much turnover, and it's a lot of work. And I think even just based on that, the people that bought in the last, couple of years, a lot of them that I've spoken to, it's like, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to sell. And I think that's it. Like, are these units all going to be put up for rent, or are they just going to sell at a really high price? And really, that's not going to be fixing any problem. That's just putting more homes on the market that are unaffordable for the majority of people.
Yeah, that's a good point. I cannot wait to hear how the Airbnb conversation falls out in Vancouver, because I'm sure that will be used as precedent and shared across the province. So that's going to be really neat to see.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, I look at some of the things that have been, mentioned, like there's people who just own 30 units and they run that like a business. And like, yeah, of course there are. I know there are. I think, certainly did bringing the foreign buyer ban in Canada effectively change the cost of housing for Canadians? Well,
No.
it depends how many foreign buyers are buying in Canada. And, based on what we've seen, that's not very many, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it affects people who want to move here. Like it affects people who I meet from the States. They want to move here. They want to buy a home here. Like they can't buy a home here. And I think the Airbnb situation is very similar. Short-term rentals, it's like, yeah, it's going to shut those people down, of course, but also it's going to make it very difficult for people who want to invest in the real estate market as a means to get ahead, especially in a city like Vancouver, so expensive to live. Is it your right to own an investment property? No, of course not. But should you be able to afford to buy real estate as a way that you can start to build wealth towards your future? Yeah. And I have so many clients who can't afford to own their own home, can't buy one big enough, right? So if you want to get into real estate, your only other option is investment, right? It's not necessarily your principal residence, but that's the real estate you can afford. So
what's interesting is again, like those that have those 30 units that are running it as a business, yeah, it's going to affect them. But then you look at, the stay-at-home mom that they saved up enough down payment to get this extra property so that, she has that extra income next year. It might not be huge, but it's something extra, like it's going to affect them, right? And that's, again, it's like this big gap between those that are, running it as a business and someone that, maybe has a short-term rental in their home that's using it as extra income. And I've had clients that don't have homes, that do not have a primary residence and are looking to get into the real estate market at some point, and they purchase rental properties to start so that they can gain equity, everything's being paid, and then hopefully within a couple of years they have enough built up so they can buy their own principal residence. So there's just so many different scenarios, and I guess we'll have to see how it all plays out and what happens. And I am glad that they have a plan as to how they're going to roll it out, with the fine increases being so dramatic real fast, right? So that's going to put pressure on people and scare people a little bit to start, maybe thinking about making some changes. And I think with the time rollout, people will have a little bit of cushion to kind of figure out what they want to do. Is it enough time? I don't know. Maybe people make decisions better if it's, do this now and just do it quick. I don't know. But
I
but
do
yeah.
think a phased approach is the right thing to do. However, I would say that maybe not everybody is digging into the weeds, because even on this conversation, it's so different across the province. So there's a lot of due diligence that those people that own right now or want to own really need to do. And I'm not sure that that will get done. So that is my concern.
Yeah. And even I just reached out to a few property managers and just to see what their clients are going to be doing, and they're kind of staying, like the consensus is they're staying put until there's actual rules made. But for now, things are going to continue as planned, as they always have. So maybe people aren't, looking into it as deeply yet because it hasn't actually passed.
Yeah. And I think, maybe the question, does this help the root problem, isn't really the right question. I'm not sure that this is like at a high level intended to help the root problem. I mean, Vancouver is so, like, the deficit of rental housing in Vancouver is astronomical. And, like even within my business, when I go and I have a tenant in a property and we're listing that property for sale, like that's the absolute worst part of my job. Because I know I'm walking in and I'm telling you, you pay $1,500 right now for your 1-bedroom, but now you have to go and look for one, and your new budget is $3,000 a month. And good luck, because you might not find one either. So on the one hand, I'm like, cool, they're gonna put some more rental inventory into the market. We need that so badly. And I think that's fantastic. I'm happy about a treatment for that. But I do think that this is it is a small thing, but maybe it's supposed to be a small thing, right? I don't know.
Maybe something's better than nothing, and they have to start somewhere. But it is a very multifaceted, very complicated problem. So I guess time will tell, but I really wanted to bring you both on and collaborate with you both to get the conversation going and start to see what this is going to look like for our clients, for those folks that are living in these communities. And as things evolve, we'll have to come back together and see what's actually going on the ground.
Yeah, let's do it in a year.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, no, let's do it like after the summer rush here and see how our tourism and our economy is affected.
Actually, for you, yeah, absolutely. I want to hear. Yeah.
That's a great point. All right. Well, thank you both for taking the time, and we will talk early fall next year.
Okay, thanks.
Until I say
Bye, ladies.
Bye.